The MMA world has been buzzing since the announcement of the King's return became official. Jon Jones is back, and he's fighting for the heavyweight championship. It looks like old Dana White and Jon have finally struck a deal. So let's take a look at what Jon had to say about the negotiations.
I'm on a mission to prove to the world that you can get back on your feet after almost anything if you don't give up on yourself, you know that.
It turns out Jon didn't want to fight Cyril Gane. Not that Jones is scared to fight any fighter on the roster, be it heavyweight or 205. He was actually looking forward to fighting and taking out the former champion Francis Ngannou. Jon thinks it takes something away from the entire experience of becoming champion if he wasn't taking the belt off of someone, especially Francis.
Beijing, Cameroon, presenting the number 4 and
Gane is a great fighter. He's at the forefront of a new generation of heavyweights that combine technique and footwork with their power, but he's a little green to the American fan base right now, whereas the Predator was the big bad heavyweight champion that had gained superstar status. Perhaps Jon realizes that even if he beats Gane, there will be people doubting his greatness, claiming Jon would have fallen short in the face of Francis, that the result would be different and the only way to avoid such talk was to take the belt from Francis himself. But alas, Francis was not to be. But Gane was still a secondary option for Jones. He was sizing up the greatest heavyweight champion of all time. Jones wanted to fight Stipe despite the odds.
I just try to block it out. At the end of the day, I'm here, I'm in the present.
Dana White was always hesitant to talk openly about Jon fighting the former two-time heavyweight champion, but Jones is adamant that a fight between the two legends was not only possible, but one of his preferred entries into the baddest division. Throughout his career, Jon is wired to lengthen his list of the UFC legends he's bested, and Stipe Miocic may have been the crown jewel in that list. The daytime firefighter holds the record for most heavyweight defenses of all time and was coming off 2 resounding victories over Hall of Famer Daniel Cormier before losing the strap, and hasn't fought since. A deal may not have been reached, and it may have been Miocic who declined because Jon said he'd been training for a fight with the Ohio-born champion for almost a year. It's why his return has taken so long. First, he had a full training camp for a fight with Francis, but Cyril Gane got the shot and then Ngannou had knee surgery, so that fell through. Then, he had an entire training camp for Stipe, once again to no avail, forcing him into a third camp, and we hope nothing falls through this time around. But make no mistake, Bon Gammon is a nightmare fight for most people. He may be the key to beating Jones, so let me tell you why this is actually a very interesting matchup. Cyril may actually be faster than Jon Jones. Let's take a second here and talk about Cyril Gane, because I don't think enough people do.
UFC heavyweight champion, Cyril Gane!
Jon's legacy overshadows anybody's, and yeah, Cyril lost the decision to Francis, but the man only has 12 professional MMA fights. The only time ever lost was to the UFC champion, but that's not it. Gane is a heavyweight the world has never seen before. His lightness on his feet, how fluid and loose his striking is, the constant movement and perfect technique, all put together in a massive frame, are something to behold. Gane is 250 plus pounds of pure muscle, and his cardio seems to be exceptional for a man his size. The only times we've ever seen Jon struggle in a fight, like the first one against Gustafsson or the latest one with Reyes.
Brutal elbow.
Big elbows. Trying to finish this fight.
Shogun's badly hurt, Mike.
Jon Jones looking to finish.
It's been against a guy with the same reach and height Jon does, but if you ask Jon, he will point out how he won those fights and went on to destroy Gus in their rematch. In fact, Jon believes he's the greatest fighter the Octagon has seen, and he's got a few backups to the claim. The numbers proclaim him the GOAT. Reasonable logic follows that the greatest champion should be the one who defends his title the most times over the longest period, and Jones tops the list cleanly with 13 victories for the light heavyweight championship, with only Mighty Mouse coming close at 11.
But the closest anyone came to beating him was Vitor Belfort slapping on that armbar.
Jon is also the youngest fighter to ever become a UFC champion at 23 years old, and he took out the legendary Shogun to capture the belt. Since then, nobody has beaten more legends than Jon. His scalps include DC, Lyoto Machida, Chael Sonnen, Vitor Belfort, and more. Other accomplishment that equally impressive and important is the fact that Jon is virtually undefeated. Of his 26 victories, is only one loss handed to him due to a disqualification early in his career for throwing elbows from an illegal angle. And of course, the no contest from the failed drug test after his second victory over Daniel Cormier, but make no mistake, no man has ever gotten the best of Jon Jones inside the octagon.
He's seeing everything is what I'm He big punches landed by DC, and he's hanging on the head of Jones, looking for uppercuts, knees, there they are. Jones trying to press the issue here. Trying to survive.
That's it. He's out.
That is it.
He's out.
John Jones has done it.
Even in the fights where people argue John got handed the victory unfairly, like the defenses against Reyes, Thiago Santos, or Anthony Smith, nobody ever hurt John. All they could manage was maybe outpoint the champ for a couple of rounds, at a time in his career when John looked demotivated. Many believe this move to heavyweight is the motivation John needs to start performing inside the cage the way he used to. But still, performing in several eras of the UFC is a feat in and of itself. John
Guinea wants to put him on his back, and he does. Big smile by Jones.
Jones' longevity is unparalleled. Bones made his UFC debut after only a handful of professional MMA fights at 21 years old, all the way back in 2008. Since then, he's seen two different generations of MMA fighters. After the generation of legends, he conquered to rise up the rankings. He's been fighting world champions since he was a young boy and has not allowed any young contender to do the same thing to him. From the era of Daniel Cormier's Terminator-esque demolition of the 205 division to knockout artists like Santos striking fear into the roster, to
ever. I love you all. Thank you so much. Even the haters.
modern contenders like Smith and Reyes, nobody has gotten the best of him. But what makes John so dominant in the ring? He's the perfect build for MMA. We have to take a side note here and appreciate that some things are just given by God, and John is a physical specimen that is genetically tuned for fighting. He stands at 6 feet 4 inches, with an outrageous 84.5-inch reach that makes him a tall, long fighter in any weight class.
Finish this fight.
Clinton's trying to pry it off. He taps.
It's all over. John Jones.
Additionally, he doesn't compromise strength for length because his upper body is built like a normal light heavyweight, but his shins are tiny. That's the only way to say it, really. He has strangely small legs that compensate for a heavier upper body, and his legs aren't nearly as fragile as they look, having never let Jones down in a fight. But it's not all the accident of birth. John uses these gifts to their utmost effectiveness and has perfected his technique. Jones may be the most well-rounded mixed martial artist ever. There really is nothing that John can't do in the octagon. The bread and butter and the starting point of his athletic career is his expertise in Greco-Roman wrestling, something he used to become the first man to ever take Olympic wrestler Daniel Cormier down, thrice to be exact.
Bombs. Big John gives him every chance in the world. That's a wrap.
He has you down. He has the nastiest elbows and ground and pound in the game that have gashed open anybody they encounter. If you manage to make it to your feet, a barrage of step-in and spinning elbows will meet you with the widest arsenal of kicks in the sport. He's even deadly against the cage, and will choke you out as he did Lyoto Machida. John is already in the running for the GOAT, but a successful heavyweight campaign cemented that position 100%. We'll see you in the next video.